the world will attempt to deceive believers. And we get that, right? So there'll be anti-Catholic, anti-Christian, anti-godly forces in our culture. And anybody who doubts that just doesn't have their eyes open. For me, the greater challenge is the anti-Christ spirit in the church, which would attempt, well, you think about it, right? And it's what? It's clever presentations of anti-gospel ideas that attempt to rationalize and reconcile them with authentic church teaching. And so we have this tragic anti-Christ spirit that is coming from some church leaders that are just leading people to feel comfortable in their embrace of outright evil.
Yes. This is very, very serious and very, very difficult. The bishops have been trying to keep a facade of unity, but there's always been some measure of serious disunity, but now it's out in the open. Not only is it out in the open, but we have really prominent leaders in the church now openly advocating for things which are a departure from the faith. So what are Catholics going to do when Cardinal McElroy says anybody should come to the Eucharist, even if you're not committed to living a chaste life, and particularly the LGBTQ community? And Bishop Daly says, no, that's not true. Or when Bishop Paprocki says, hey, that's heresy. Or Archbishop Aquila writes a very reasoned critique of what's going on in Germany, and yet at the same time, we have Cardinal Hollerich from Luxembourg leading the synod, and we have Cardinal Grech, anyway, we got a big problem, and we got confusion in Rome. We don't have a clear voice. And so Catholics, I need to now take responsibility for really knowing the faith. You need to know what Scripture says. You need to know what the Catechism of the Catholic Church says. You need to begin to take personal responsibility for knowing the faith so you can discern true from false, because you're going to have to do that, and you're not going to be able to do it. You're going to say, well, so-and-so says this, and so-and-so says this. You got to be able to say, well, what so-and-so is saying isn't what the truth is, isn't what Jesus says, isn't what the church teaches, even though he's a high churchman. That's going to be a new experience for Catholics. It's going to be very, very hard to get to that point, but we have to.
Well, it feels like we're back at the age, one way I characterized it is that's back at the age of Athanasius, right? So Athanasius against the world. And, and it was over doctrine. You go forward 500 years and you have Pope Gregory and St. Peter Damian, and they're going against sexual immorality, especially same-sex immorality. And then you go forward 500 years, and it's a church that is battling against political power and riches. And it feels like all three of those errors have collided into this moment 500 years later, where we have the doctrinal, the moral, and the political material all colliding into a church where we're called to become saints. And saints, I think, increasingly by being willing to witness with even our lives. An age of new martyrs is probably approaching.
Yeah. And Jesus says, there's going to be opposition, there's going to be persecution. But if you're ashamed of me before people, I'm going to be ashamed of you before the Father in heaven. And so we got to develop that relationship with Jesus. We just got to know him, because I think the only way Catholics can survive in the future is because of personal loyalty to Jesus, personal love for Jesus, and knowledge of what he really wants and what his will is and what his teaching is. Yeah, but at the same time, it's easy for people to get scared or discouraged. And I wrote a new book, Tom, called Church in Crises, Pathways Forward. And it really goes into detail about the deceptions within the church right now, and how difficult it is. But a lot of times people say, Ralph, a lot of stuff going on. Aren't you discouraged? Not at all. I'm not discouraged, because there's nothing happening in the world or in the church that's not happening under the providence of God. God's got a plan. As difficult as it is to bring good out of this, we just got to kind of keep our eyes on Jesus, keep our eyes on the true teachings of the church, which are not hard to find, and just really ask God for the fortitude, the courage to persevere in the face of growing persecution.